Hello and welcome to the Schwartz Advisors Report here with Aftermarket News. I'm Emma Henderson and with me today is Rick Schwartz, CEO of Schwartz Advisors. How are you doing?
Doing great, Emma. Good to see you.
You too. Now recently you and the investment bank Piper Sandler co-hosted a conference. Now this is specifically for investors. Can you tell me about that event?
Certainly. We've been working with Piper Sandler for 3 years now, and together with the bankers at Piper Sandler, we started a conference in 2022, and it's called the Automotive Service Summit. So all the topics at this event are focused on various service related parts of the aftermarket. So we get involved with everything from undercar repair to collision, quick lube. We get involved with technology issues and a lot of other topics related to the service part of the aftermarket.
Now I'm curious, now why does the conference focus on automotive services? Is there a specific investor interest in that part of the aftermarket?
Yeah, well, couple of things. First of all, there is a lot of interest from the investor community, that's the private equity investors in service. But there's also just so much to talk about when it comes to service. So when we put together the original event in 2022, the idea was let's put together a program where the entire day would be focused on service topics. So there'd be some continuous threads throughout the event. Again, I mentioned some of the different topics we covered. That was the first reason why we did services. We wanted to have something that had just a consistent through line throughout all the different topics we discussed. But the investor community looks at the aftermarket the same way all of us who work in the aftermarket look at the service part of the business. We look at how many vehicles are on the road, the VIO, 280, 290 million vehicles. They look at the age of the vehicles. They look at all the other metrics that we look at, and it's a very big addressable market. And so the investors see opportunities in service the same way a lot of people in the aftermarket see opportunities. And for the investor community, this conference is a great way for the investors to learn more so they can make educated investment decisions.
Yeah, and how active has the Schwartz Advisors team been in the automotive services?
Yeah, we've been very active, especially in the last year and a half. We've advised two different private equity firms who've made acquisitions in the service arena. We advised Kian Capital when they acquired a group of Meineke franchisees. And since they made that acquisition that we helped them with, they've gone on to buy several other Meineke franchisees. And more recently, we worked with another private equity firm called ICV Partners, and we advised them on their acquisition of a chain of Valvoline Quick Lube franchisees. So those are just two of the more recent deals that we've worked on, and we've been working in the service arena for a number of years now.
And if I'm right, this is the third year that you've had this conference. So why do investors continue to be interested in the auto and truck service market?
Yeah, it's a big market, and there's just so many different ways for investors to look at new investment opportunities, and things are constantly changing. So while we have some of the same people who've attended all 3 years, we've also had new people come in who wanted to learn what are some of the latest trends. They want to hear from some of the leading operators and executives in the different areas of service. So, it's just an opportunity for people who want to make intelligent and informed investment decisions to just stay on top of not only where things are today, but investors have to make some decisions where they think ahead. What's the market going to be like in the next 1 to 3 to 5, maybe even longer term in terms of how many years out they're thinking. So, one of the things that the folks at Piper Sandler have been really terrific in as a partner in is we want to think about how do we help educate the attendees, again, as I said, about what's going on today, but also what do we project is going to happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this, but within automotive services, are there areas of particular interest right now? And how does that interest drive up actual transaction prices?
Great question. And let me talk about areas of interest first. One area that's getting a lot of attention and has been getting a lot of attention is just the whole world of tire dealerships and what's going on with tires, because it doesn't matter what kind of vehicle we're talking about, whether it's a passenger car or a delivery truck or an 18-wheeler, there's constant need for new tires or tire repair. So that's something that we're seeing a lot of interest in. For some people, they're surprised at the activity with Quick Lube dealerships. And the surprise there is some people look at the increasing interval in oil changes, and there's an assumption that the Quick Lube industry is going to slow down. But if anything, we've seen even more activity in Quick Lube. There's also a lot of activity in collision repair. So I can go through pretty much every segment that we've covered. There's just been a lot of different activity. So again, as I said earlier, investors want to stay abreast of what's going on with the different trends in those categories. In terms of transaction values, it doesn't always necessarily correlate to higher transaction values. Transaction values are oftentimes a function of a lot of other factors that are completely out of kind of the scope of our conference. It could be, what are the current trends in terms of transaction values overall? There could be a lot of filtering in of other factors and variables like interest rates or competition for deals. So, I think what's more important to us than the transaction value maybe changing as a result of information that we disseminate at our conference, it's just making sure that investors are well informed.
Yeah, and is there anything interesting that came out of the conference?
Yeah, so we had some speakers talking about fleet and mobile service. Now, fleet and mobile service has been around for a while, but there's a lot more activity, and we're seeing some really different, interesting models that are focusing on fleet service. So with fleet service, we see all the different kinds of delivery trucks that are on the road today. It could be all the Amazon trucks and UPS and FedEx trucks that are on the road. So doing fleet service or mobile service for all those trucks is really important, because the operators can't afford to have those trucks in downtime. There's also some interesting business models that are trying to figure out how to work with consumers in terms of mobile service. Because, as consumers, we're all busy. We don't always have time to get our car or truck in to get some of the service that's required. So some really smart operators are trying to figure out how to do mobile service on consumer vehicles.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, you like to include disruptors in these conferences. Why?
Well, when we put together the first conference with Piper Sandler a couple of years ago, we realized that there are some businesses that are taking innovative approaches to business models. And so, they're really disrupting how business gets done. And so we find that interesting when there's a business that has maybe a new take on how to go to market within a certain type of service repair. There's also some disruptors that are not necessarily kind of upending things so much as they are just showing that there's new ways of getting business done. So for us and our partners at Piper Sandler, we have these disruptors because we want to demonstrate to some of the investor community, the attendees at this event, that there may be different ways to scale a business. And it's important for them to understand, hey, what's the status quo, but also who are some of the businesses that are taking different approaches to building and growing a business.
Absolutely. Now, I would imagine that investors are keenly interested in the trajectory of EV penetration. So, what is the Schwartz Advisors' opinion on the effect EVs will have on automotive services, and how does that affect investors' willingness to acquire the service space?
Yeah, that's also a great question, and there's just so much to unpack there. So, first of all, at Schwartz Advisors, we've been tracking um, the EVs, the growth of EVs for the last 5 or 6 years, if not more. In fact, we've built our own proprietary model of electric vehicle penetration in the overall VIO. And so, for the last several years, we've built our forecast, and our model goes out 30 years. And we build our model by powertrain type. So within the model, we're looking at internal combustion engines, we're looking at the different types of hybrids on the road, and we're looking at EVs. We're also looking at autonomous vehicles and when they're going to come online. So we have our own view of what we think the trajectory is going to be for EVs. Now, I think most people who are watching this have seen some of the reports over the last year of a slowdown in some of in the sales of EVs. But EVs are here to stay. There's no doubt about it. And while EV adoption is probably going to be a lot slower than maybe some had forecast a few years ago, the adoption rates are well in line with what we've been forecasting at Schwartz Advisors. But regardless of when EVs become a bigger percentage of the overall VIO, we welcome that because the aftermarket has always been accepting of new technologies, and as EVs come more online, it's going to create new businesses, new business models. It's going to create new jobs. So while the adoption rate and the new business formation might take a while, it's going to happen, and we think that over time, investors are going to be looking at service opportunities in the EV world. You know, swapping out batteries, getting new battery technology for EVs, things like that are going to be interesting to watch over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, Rick, this has been very informative. Thank you so much for joining me today. For the Schwartz Advisors Report and Aftermarket News, I'm Emma Henderson. Everyone, have a great day.